So on Tuesday, we talked about all the difficulties of getting here, and the doubts and fears and resistance. And now we're on the last full day of session, and other difficulties now arise. First of all, I would just like to say how much I appreciate everybody who's set session for the first time, that you've done really well and you're still here. And everybody else, of course, who's overcome their resistance and doubts and have stayed. And I'm sure lots of you have had the thought that, what excuse can I find to go home? But we are on the last day, and there's a few things I wanted to say about that. One is that let's try and keep it strong and tight, because what happens is it just does loosen up. It's easy to start thinking about the journey home, and then maybe there's some excitement about some clarity or understanding you've had, and you'd like to put that into practice, or there's some fear that back into daily life. But let's just remain present in the session, and particularly for the three folk who are going to receive Tokudo this evening. It would be very nice for them if we can maintain a strong session to the end. I don't know if anybody have seen our novice heads, three of them around, like beacons. So just before I start, is there anything anybody wants to ask me in the context of what's happened before? And may I, while I'm saying this, thank Ken very much for, as always, the workshops he runs, which I know, like anything else, not everybody finds them valuable, but I know some people find them really valuable. And it's exactly the same for me when I do a big mind workshop or something. Some people don't like it and some people love it. You know, it depends on what suits us. But I know it takes a lot of thought and energy and conscientiousness from Ken to organise them. So thank you, Ken. Thank you so much. Yeah. So is there anything that's come up about before I start a kind of talk? Anybody wants to, in the last few days, or about the Tokudo ceremony? Although I think we did. Did we post out details of what it means and what it is? Yeah? Are we all okay? Okay. I was just thinking while we were sitting about the title of this session, which is Stepping Out of Self-Deception. And I don't know whether any of you have, after sitting for 4 days, 3 days, 3 full days, this is our 4th full day, have experienced any sense of feeling more settled and feeling okay with life and feeling okay with the universe, that kind of feeling. This is the essence of stepping out of self-deception. This is what it's about. Feeling okay, feeling spacious, feeling a bit like you've got a bit more hearing space and a bit more energy for other folk and where they are in their lives. And I'd like you to remember that because it's we don't have to go looking for it, we all have it. It's all intrinsic to our being, that we can access that place. It's just that we get overwhelmed, I guess, with our own stuff. And one of the and that's natural and understandable. And one of the reasons that we sit and the vehicle for this practice is that it does allow us to uncover and become more aware of of our own process, and that can't be avoided. At the same time, there comes a point when we get bored with our own stuff. We just get bored with it. We've been around the houses with it so many times that we decide to finally that we can put it down. But there's no kind of shortcut to that. There's no gainsaying it. But it doesn't happen until we allow ourselves to really put everything on the table, own up to everything, to ourselves, not necessarily to other folk, but to ourselves, and to make the decision that it's okay, it's really okay, that we all go through this process. And I think the measure of when we talk about interdependence, it's the realization that we are all subject to varying degrees, but for each of us it feels very real and personal, our own journey and our own process. And in a way, on Sesshin, as the Sesshin as a body and all the different things that are going on for different folk at different times is just a reflection of the individual process that each of us go through as well. So it's a real, Sesshin is a real measure of the fact that we're all both struggling, and we also all have the capacity for natural joy, which we need to really emphasize. So I've used the expression journey and so on and so forth, and that's one of the first things I wanted to talk about, this idea that the spiritual practice is a journey, and it is a journey, and as you know, in lots of different traditions and religious practices, and in Greek mythology, there's always this idea of the journey. We go underworld and we fight all those monsters and overcome various things, and finally we come out a cave at the other end, and there's redemption, and we marry the one we loved, and we go off to paradise and do the things that we wanted to do. That's the and I will speak more about why that's necessary later. But finally, if we see the spiritual path, and of course the spiritual path and journey is often highlighted as the most important in our lives, and undertaking it is the most difficult challenge, and that's where lots of stories abound about how we overcome these obstacles. But finally, if we see it as a journey, it's postponement. It's a postponement of now. It's always a barrier to experiencing now. And how would you feel if all the props were taken away, that there is a journey, there are barriers to pass through, even if we know intellectually it's a gateless gate, and in fact there's nothing stopping us moving forward and being free? How would you feel if that prop was taken away, that actually there's no need for the journey? How would you feel? How would you feel if it's pointless? How would you feel if this whole idea of the warrior overcoming obstacles and finally receiving redemption was a myth? What would you think? What do you think?
I think it's scary because it means I have to do it now.
Yeah, exactly. It's scary, isn't it? I mean, how would you feel if somebody said this whole shebang, and I'm doing myself out of a job, was pointless? Because the way my mind works, certainly, and maybe yours as well, is that unless we have obstacles to overcome and difficulties, and the more difficulties and the more obstacles, the more valuable it is and the more worth it has, my mind starts to find that really difficult. So if I said that all that it really needs is the courage, and it does require courage, to enter this present moment, and here's the kickback, enter this present moment on its own terms, not on your terms, how would you feel? Because if you could embrace that with confidence and know that you can embrace this moment on its terms, not your own, then you're free.
What if you said it's a moment by moment process?
It's a moment by moment process, yeah. Can you embrace that? It's the same thing, I think, Karen, isn't it? Yeah, same moment by moment process. Yeah, but can you be in that moment by moment? I find it really difficult. I'm not in any way saying it's easy, but that's the challenge. Finally, that we undertake. Can we enter into directionless practice? This is what Dogen was all about. Can we enter into directionless practice? Can we take away all our props and just be present?
I'd always feel I wasn't ready, a bit later.
Yeah, that's right, it's a postponement. Yeah, exactly. We postpone it.
It's a bit vulnerable making.
Yeah.
A man confuses that with weakness.
Yeah.
That's my resistance.
Yeah.
And what about saving the world?
Who's to say you can't save the world?
What if you're directionless?
Yeah.
That implies without purpose. And
No, it doesn't. It just means that you're present at the moment. So if you were crossing a road and you saw somebody hit by a bus, you'd go immediately and help them, wouldn't you? You weren't in advance having that.
okay.
So you act
The
spontaneously.
present moment requires a saving of the world anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It requires you to do what's necessary, and that may be just putting your cans in the right recycling bin. You know. Sorry, Emma.
Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I struggle with that because sometimes it feels like I feel as if I am just taking this moment and accepting everything as it is, etc. But then I don't know the answer to the next poem, and actually I find out that later I'm kidding myself, and you know?
Kidding yourself in what respect?
That I'm actually accepting this moment as it is. You know, sometimes the not accepting it is not very obvious to me.
Yeah. Well, the not accepting it is also not. Is also accepting the not accepting. Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to add layers. So we immediately judge the not accepting as inappropriate and wrong, and so we're not there anymore. We can immediately create separation. And what Suzanne said. That it kind of leaves you feeling vulnerable or weak. It's like it implies a weakness. Yeah. I think that's why I find Trungpa wonderful, because Trungpa is the warrior. The warrior is the person who's prepared to allow their vulnerability to be seen, which is the opposite of the usual view of the warrior, which is to hide it. But he says the warrior is the one who allows their vulnerability to be seen. And that takes, for me, more bravery than to cover it up. Because we may be mocked. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we don't want to drop this idea of direction and a path is that it then faces us immediately with all our conditioned tendencies to behave in a particular way. So all the ways we're grooved, and the grooves get deeper as you get older. The more you hold on to them, for sure, and the harder to get out of. Unless we allow ourselves to really look at our conditioned ways of behaving and being, then all that will happen is that all our actions will be based on memory. We'll take actions based on what happened before, on what we feel will protect us most, and that's tough, because what happens is, and to all of us, I think, is that we struggle with giving up our conditioned ways of being and patterns, because the one thing that they do for us, even if they cause us pain, is they give us a real sense of purpose. So from the one side, we've got. I'm always apprehensive of talking about small self and big self, because there's only one self. But as I keep saying, and forgive me if I keep saying it, but it's really important. It's a linguistic technique to allow us to talk. On the one side, we've got this narrow, less spacious, self-involved self, and it wants purpose and function, and a feeling that it may finally find a place where it will be at ease. And on the other side, we've got wisdom, which sees the whole process of the journey as counterproductive, as actually keeping us away from being present to our lives. So we've got the two things going on, which is an interesting dynamic that we all struggle with. And sometimes, well, most of the time, most of us are on this side, and then we come on Sesshin and we get the idea, we get a feeling and an experience of what it's like to be over here. And it's much nicer over here, isn't it? Doesn't it just feels easier. And over here, we get to see that the sense of separation, and often separation creates loneliness and lack of connectedness. Acts as a barrier to us feeling this understanding of everyone's process, and thus our interconnectedness with them, because we're having the same deal applies to us. And it's that interconnectedness and awareness of everybody else's situation alongside our own that, which I think is what's called love. It's not mentioned often. I think we spoke about it, yeah. It's not mentioned much in Zen practice, possibly because it's not a culturally recognized thing in Japan and China, and the origin of this tradition. They use different words. They use compassion, they use wisdom, but one of the great beauties of Christian religion is that they do emphasize love, and we miss it. But I think it's all the same thing, it's not, it's just different terminology. So there is this paradox that arises all the time, that we have to be on the journey, and at the same time the journey finally is unnecessary. Sorry. And it's the same, I've written down here at the top of this page 3, the paradox of letting be and being free. Because if we didn't have the idea that we were stuck and trapped, we wouldn't have the idea of freedom either. So freedom arises because, as a concept really, because we think we're limited. And if we experience ourselves as limited, we feel a need for this teaching. And the paradox of this teaching is that it arises initially, the Buddha really understood this. The Buddha was quite sharp, quite quick on his feet. He recognized all this stuff. So the paradox of the Buddha's teaching is it arises from a view of limitation and basic suffering, which is what he saw and felt, this limited view of suffering and our own limitation. And it ends with the fact that we're not limited and we're intrinsically free. And I think there's a book entitled, is it by what's he called? The chap down in Turkey? Reb Wilson, is it? Reb Anderson. Reb Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
I think he has a book called The Perfection of Imperfection. Is that what you think? And this is exactly what he's talking about, the perfection of imperfection. Our imperfection, if we can embrace it, is perfect. It's perfect. But it's a tough one to handle, you know. So finally, what this is all about is that a wise perception, if we can embrace it, if we can kind of really experience it, wise perception releases us from any fixed view. So we're not bound by any point of view, which of course raises all kinds of doubts and questions about ethics, about morality, about behavior, if we release from all points of view. But pragmatically, what I see that happens is if we do release ourselves from a fixed view, that which the small self really wants, you know, and feels is just and honest, arises in us naturally. We don't have to struggle for it. So we feel naturally what arises is a sense of kindness for ourselves, kindness for other people, compassion, and even love. And so even the ethical system that the Buddha set up, the Eightfold Noble Path, what he realized was that all of us, to begin with, we need some kind of direction, some kind of platform, some kind of guideline that pragmatically has been discovered to lead to a life that feels more at ease, and we can feel more authentic in ourselves. That itself can finally be let go of, because hopefully it will arise naturally out of who we are. And if we feel that the wisdom and authenticity and sense of truth that we arrived at, if we feel that's the end of the game, that's just as bad as self-deception. It's not the end of the game. It's just the beginning again. So the whole thing rolls. So we keep pulling the rug out from under ourselves, and this is why this practice is so difficult, and in fact so revolutionary and radical, that it's not about what's that old phrase about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic or whatever it is. It's not about finally, and everything I say, question, by the way, I'll go on to questioning, but I'm only ever speaking from one perspective. There's always another perspective. But from this perspective, all the practices we undertake, and I think I was speaking to Ilva about mindfulness, and mindfulness is a wonderful practice, and it really helps a lot of people, and it's been a great assistance to folk. But finally, mindfulness itself is not the end of the game, because mindfulness takes into account that the self still is a substantial identity that we have.
It's the deck chairs, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's the deck chairs.
It's the deck chairs, yeah. And why there is this difference between this tradition and please don't think I'm in any way comparing them, one's bad, one's good, but the Zen tradition takes the ship away as well. So you're just on the waves, you're just on the waves. And living in that place, and I hope, is Morris here? Oh, Morris is there. Yeah, I hope Morris won't mind me saying, but Morris said to me that he'd considered all the great questions in life and finally decided he didn't know and he didn't care. and living in that place of openness and not knowingness is a real freedom. And just what I've written here. So, from this perspective, all our practice is not moving from a kind of limitation and lack of freedom and in a lack, as David Lloyd would say, and in a lack. It's more that finally we arrive at a point where we just want to naturally express our own freedom and our own being and our own uniqueness, whilst taking into account that everyone else is unique. So we finally come sometimes to a view that the mystery of the whole show is fantastic in its own right. It doesn't have to be sorted. And then, as I just said, don't take any of this as in any way true or valid unless you personally feel that it works in your life. And question it, just as when the Kalamas, the tribe, did you say Kalamas? Is it Kalamas? Kalamas? The Kalamas, the tribe living in India, asked the Buddha how would they know whether a teacher was authentic? How would they know that all these people coming around that wanted them to be their followers or whatever? How would they know whether they were real or not? And he said, this is the way to judge. When you know for yourselves that these qualities are skillful, these qualities are blameless, these qualities are praised by the wise, these qualities, when adopted and carried out, lead to your own welfare and happiness, then you should enter and remain in them. So only when you know that this practice and what you learn from it brings ease to your life and feels real to you, it's only valid then. And it's completely valid to disagree and say, no, that doesn't work for me. I found a different way of finding ease in my life. Yeah. Time swiftly passes by. So is there anything that I've said up to now that sticks in your throat, that irritates you, that you question, that yeah?
You were talking at the start about sort of sense of ease and spaciousness that you develop on session, and I was wondering why it was I was so much nicer to people on session than my wife and child.
Yeah. I really understand that. It's that old saying that you can't be a genius in your own house. It's true. Yeah, it's a great. The people closest to us are our greatest teachers, for sure.
I suppose you will say more about it, but it is ultimately frustrating, isn't it? The notion that you have to make the journey.
Yeah.
As Dogen said,
yeah.
Studying the self to lose the self. To lose the self, you've got to study it. You've really got to see it inside out.
Yeah.
But the ultimate frustration is that when we say, you can live in the moment.
Yeah.
But the problem there is the you, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that immediately my ego wants to get hold of that.
Yeah.
I can live in the moment happily, where everything is great.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah. Well said. It's true. And how difficult is it? It's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to keep constantly on guard or aware that, to be present. Right, thank you for raising that, John, because to know thyself, as you said, to know thyself is really difficult, because all of us have got parts of ourselves that we really don't want to look at. We don't want to bring them out into the light. One, because we're embarrassed about them, and we don't own up to them, and we think if other people see them in us, they won't like us, or they'll, So, absolutely, this journey, and we'll go back to that metaphor, requires that you have the courage or bravery, if you like, to really look in all the dark corners. Because if you don't, those dark corners, or shadows, as Genpo Roshi calls them, come up and bite us, They don't necessarily bite us, they bite the people we mix with, because we act out of those places unconsciously. We don't know, we haven't acknowledged them and looked at them, and we act out of them by seeing them in other people, and we don't like them. And particularly in the people we're most close to, who reflect back to us probably those parts of us that we least wish to own up to. So it's great to get feedback, if you can bear it. If you can bear it.
I think Sensei, there's a sense for me that there's an intimacy that seems to arise on Sesshin that I would like to try and grab hold of and take back to my daily life. And it's that knife edge of trying to just let that intimacy arise, as opposed to try and grab it, package it, and take it home. And it's kind of trusting that can arise with practice. So I sort of bring that into my life, as opposed to trying.
No, I really understand, and I think you're dead right. It's about having enough confidence to trust ourselves to behave or act in a way that we would most like to when the situation arises, where, like road rage, the perfect example, where we may not wind the window down and put our fist out and, and think, well, I've done that. I've done that as well. I've cut somebody up. I've jumped the lights. Certainly I've done that. Apologies. There's
a sense of great faith, though. That's the faith of it, isn't it?
Yeah. I wanted to just read you a koan, the kind of, because we think, often, I know I do as well sometimes, the koans and sometimes cannot be relevant to our lives, but these people who wrote them 1700 years ago were just the same as us. And I'm not going to do a big Dharma talk on this or ask you too much about it, but I just wanted you to kind of, that everything I'm saying has been understood and contained and encapsulated in a koan. And this is Rinzai's true man. And so Rinzai addressed the assembly and he said, "There is a true person of no rank. He is always leaving and entering the gates of your face. You beginners who have not witnessed him, look, look." Thereupon a monk asked, "How about this true man of no rank?" Meaning himself. Rinzai got down from the seat and grabbed him. The monk hesitated, and Rinzai pushed him away, saying, "This true man of no rank, what a shit stick he is." So it starts off, there is a true person of no rank. There is a true person of no rank. He is always looking, he is always leaving and entering the gates of your face. What do you think the crucial word or hyphenated word is here in this koan? There is a true person of no rank. He is always leaving and entering the gates of your face.
No rank?
Yeah. No rank. A true person of no rank. There's no rank, there's no special requirement to experience the world fully and spontaneously. You don't need any rank. You've got it naturally. And he says it clearly, there is a true person of no rank. He is always leaving and entering the gates of your face. So I've written down here, we are always from beginningless beginning to endless end at one with the universe and everything in it. And we don't realize that because of the barriers we create by this self. E.g., the gates of our face. He says, he is always leaving and entering the gates of your face. But by gates of our face, it means the barriers that we create to experiencing that authentic, real self. So what do you think happens when the monk asked, "How about this true man of no rank?" What was he, and there's a question mark, it's a question mark. How about this true man of no rank? What does that imply about the questioner?
He doesn't know. He's saying, am I manifesting this now?
Yeah, am I? Yeah, he's still got doubt, he's still not sure that he is. And so why, if you were Rinzai gets down off the seat and grabs him by the collar and gives him a shake. Why does he do that? What's he saying to the monk?
Don't hesitate now.
When he's shaking him, where is he saying this? Where is this man of no of true rank manifested? Where is it manifested? Yeah, now in him. Yeah, he's got him by the shoulders. He's saying, "You, mate, it's you. You've got it. You don't need to be doubtful." But the monk in the story hesitates. He doesn't respond. I mean, he should have given Rinzai a slap. That was a good response. Because as we've spoken before, for in the hierarchical times of when this story is set, to give a master a slap would have been a really serious thing to do. You would have had to be completely free and feel totally equal to give a master a slap. He didn't give him a slap, he hesitated. And Rinzai pushes him away and says, "This true man," he doesn't deny he's a true man, he says, "This true man of no rank, what a shit stick he is." He rejects him, but he acknowledges him at the same time. We're all shit sticks. And we're all shit sticks of no rank. Incidentally, I suppose you do know what a shit stick is, do you?
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't have toilet paper in those days, put it that way. You haven't found a suitably shaped stick in the wood And if it was a good shape, I assume you kept it. You travelled with it, you know. And anybody who put their hands on your personal shit stick, yeah.
This slapping.
Pardon?
Work.
Pardon?
This slapping.
This slapping, yeah.
Does it work?
It works. Don't test it on me, Morris. I'd be glad if you didn't. Can I read you something that was written by a contemporary Zen master? I can't remember his name. I think it was the guy that Alan Scott trained with for a year in Japan. And this is what he says. Practicing Zen is just exactly to throw off self-clinging. Zen is not just a feeling or an idea. It is this doing stroke practice. Throw off body and mind. Forget about them. Throw yourself into the Buddha's house and everything will be taken care of. What is there then to work out? If you practice the way, you are inevitably going to have to climb the mountain. You're going to have to struggle through hardships over and over again. There have been those for whom nothing existed outside of the way, but everyone has practiced by throwing off body and mind. The practice that you're engaged in when you involve yourself completely in giving all and sparing nothing. All the Buddhas and all the patriarchs went through the same practice. However, when you do get a taste of truth, even a slight taste of truth, life begins to vibrate in a completely new way. When you get a taste of truth, you know there is nothing for you to do except thoroughly penetrate it. This is what happens to you naturally. So, it will vibrate even with the slightest taste. Okay. The big question is, can you surrender to your life as it is now? Can you surrender to your life as it now? That's really what this whole practice is about.
Can you just accept your non-surrendering?
Yeah.
That sounds easy.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can truly accept it, yeah, because the surrender is much more. It carries much more than. It's not just giving in, as it were. It's really recognizing that the more resistance that we put up or apply to being who we are, the more it will grow. It won't go away if we resist it. So this surrender is about, it's much more than a kind of passive giving in. It's about bravely and courageously embracing your life with all its problems and all its issues. So can I repeat, I think I ended on Tuesday by saying I encourage you to be present and observant of your life and to allow it to be. And that doesn't mean, with reference to, I think, what Bob mentioned on Tuesday toward the end of the talk, that doesn't mean that we may not also act as though our hair was on fire and we really wanted to go for it, you know? We really wanted to in a traditional Zen way, to drop off body and mind. That's okay as well. That includes it as well. That's surrendering to who you are at that time. So everything's available depending on you feeling authentic in it. And I wish you well. I wish you really well. And I want to just finally, I've written down, I think I put it out in an email, but this is really important to me, particularly towards the end of Sesshin, that our everyday life is not a distraction from our spiritual life or our aspirations. But if we create the division between our ordinary everyday life and our spiritual life, then it will become a limitation. It is all one and the same. And in fact, I think that if you can be present in your daily life in an ordinary, and surrounded by people who aren't perhaps as interested or have the direction toward increasing self-awareness, I think being in that environment gives you lots of tools and lots of opportunities to really see where you're at. It's actually a gift. It's not a burden. And then, my final question to ask you, because it's fascinating, is, to me, if you had a fulfilled life, imagine you had a fulfilled life, what would it look like? This one, yeah. I'm sure for all of us, it would be like this one. No, isn't that fascinating? It's true, isn't it? I mean, if you really thought about it and somebody comes along and says, I'm going to change your life for you. I'm going to put you, you'd kick up a hell of a fuss. What would a fulfilled life look like? Okay, thank you.